The jungle is alive with whispers. As twilight bleeds across the horizon, the Maya city glows in the fading light, its pyramids and temples rising like silent guardians of secrets long forgotten. Drums once thundered here, echoing through stone courtyards where priests raised torches to the heavens. But now, only the cries of distant birds and the rustle of leaves fill the void, as if the city itself mourns a vanished ruler. History records him as a mighty king, his name carved into stele, his victories immortalized in glyphs. He ruled with strength, uniting fractured tribes and building monuments that defied time. Yet one night, without warning, he disappeared. No body. No burial. No trace. Just fragments of prophecy etched into stone, hinting at journeys into forbidden realms and bargains with forces beyond comprehension. Was he betrayed by rivals, consumed by rebellion, or did he step willingly into the realm of myth, seeking immortality denied to mortals? Scholars offer facts, archaeology, carbon dating, fractured dynastic records. But legends speak louder, of a king who unlocked forbidden knowledge, and of a city cursed by his absence. This is not merely history, it is an unsolved riddle. And the deeper we go, the stranger it becomes. The jungles of Mesoamerica whisper with the echoes of a vanished world, a civilization that once flourished with brilliance and mystery, the Maya. To the untrained eye, the remnants of their cities, towering pyramids, stone-carved stelae, and sprawling palaces, may seem like silent ruins. But for those who look closer, they reveal the traces of a society that mastered both the heavens above and the earth beneath their feet. The Maya were not simply a scattered collection of tribes. They forged a sophisticated civilization that thrived for centuries, spanning modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Their cities were connected by networks of trade and alliances, with rulers who commanded not only armies but also cosmic legitimacy. Power for the Maya king was never just political, it was divine. He was seen as the bridge between mortals and the gods, a living embodiment of celestial order. Their achievements in mathematics and astronomy rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, other ancient cultures. Long before Europe adopted the concept of zero, the Maya had already integrated it into their number system, enabling calculations of astonishing complexity. They tracked planetary cycles with uncanny precision, predicting solar eclipses and mapping the movement of Venus with an accuracy that modern astronomers still marvel at today. To the Maya, the cosmos was not distant, it was a living clock, dictating the timing of wars, ceremonies, and even the ascension of kings. Their architectural feats remain equally awe-inspiring. Rising above the dense jungle canopy, the stepped pyramids of cities like Tikal and Chichen Itza were not merely monuments of power but also instruments of science and ritual. Some temples were designed with precise alignments so that during solstices or equinoxes, shadows would slither across stone in patterns resembling sacred serpents. Their ball courts echoed with games that were more than sport, they were ritual battles, often tied to the fate of captives and the favor of the gods. Yet, beneath this brilliance lies a shadow. The Maya left behind glyphs and codices, records of dynasties and prophecies, but so much remains undeciphered, or deliberately obscured. Their ritual practices included bloodletting and sacrifice, acts that scholars struggle to interpret. Were they desperate offerings to maintain cosmic balance, or were they expressions of deeper, more secretive knowledge about the cycles of life and death? Even today, fragments of forbidden texts hint at mysteries that stretch beyond conventional history, speaking of portals, gods walking among mortals, and prophecies that remain unfulfilled. It is this contrast, the undeniable sophistication of their science and the unsettling obscurity of their rituals, that keeps the Maya shrouded in fascination. They were masters of both logic and mysticism, capable of building cities aligned with the stars while also conducting rites that modern minds may see as terrifying. This duality forms the foundation of their enduring enigma. How could a civilization so advanced also embrace practices that seem to dance on the edge of the supernatural? As we peel back the layers of their legacy, one truth becomes clear: to understand the Maya is to accept that brilliance and mystery were inseparable in their world. And it is within this world that one of history's greatest puzzles emerges, the unexplained disappearance of a Maya king. He was not born into silence but into whispers, whispers that foretold a destiny greater than the soil that cradled his first steps. From the fragments of dusty chronicles, his name flickers like a half-forgotten flame. Some historians paint him as a reformer, a leader who lifted his kingdom from the shadows of obscurity into a brief age of brilliance. Others, in contrast, speak of an ambitious ruler, intoxicated by power and blinded by the lure of divine favor. His rise was neither sudden nor accidental. As a young prince, he watched the kingdom fracture under weak governance, nobles clawing for influence while commoners bore the burden of endless feuds. It was in this chaos that he sharpened his resolve. Accounts suggest he possessed a rare magnetism, the kind that could silence quarrels with a single glance, yet ignite fervor with carefully chosen words. Some claimed his presence was commanding, others believed it was unerringly supernatural. When the crown finally rested upon his head, the transformation was swift. Roads were built where there had only been mud tracks, trade routes flourished under his seal, and walls rose higher against threats from beyond. His court became a theater of grandeur, filled with scholars, artisans, and emissaries who marveled at the sudden vigor of his reign. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though fortune had at last favored the kingdom. But shadows lingered behind the brilliance. Local legends whisper of sacrifices demanded in hidden temples, of secret councils where his advisors urged him to seek power not from men but from forces older than time itself. The chronicles remain divided. Were these rumors born from fear of his strength, or do they hint at a truth carefully veiled by centuries of retelling? One story tells of his nights spent in a secluded chamber, poring over relics and scrolls brought from distant lands. To his people, he was a beacon of progress. To his enemies, a dangerous sovereign whose ambitions reached beyond the mortal realm. Even his allies began to wonder whether his achievements were the work of strategy, or of something far more arcane. What remains undeniable is the aura he projected, a ruler who embodied both the promise of prosperity and the threat of peril. His reign was a balancing act between admiration and dread, devotion and suspicion. The people could not decide whether they lived under the rule of a visionary king or the shadow of a cursed monarch. And so, his story does not rest quietly in the archives. Instead, it pulses with contradiction, waiting for the moment when triumph would give way to tragedy, the first notes of a mystery that would end with his sudden, inexplicable disappearance. For centuries, the story of the vanished king has been whispered in the markets, painted in fading murals, and inscribed upon stone tablets that have withstood the erosion of time. But what truly happened on that fateful day remains one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. Records tell us that it began as an ordinary dawn, the sun rising in golden silence over the temples, incense curling from sacred fires, and priests chanting in rhythmic devotion. Yet, by dusk, the throne stood empty, and the kingdom itself trembled with uncertainty. Eyewitness accounts, preserved in both glyphs and oral traditions, describe strange omens in the skies. Some say the heavens roared with thunder without a single cloud in sight. Others claim to have seen a serpent-shaped constellation burning brighter than ever before, taken as a sign that the gods themselves had descended to reclaim their chosen ruler. Temple inscriptions carved in haste suggest frantic searches through jungle paths and palace corridors, but each line ends abruptly, as if the scribes themselves have been interrupted by chaos. The theories that surround this disappearance are as varied as they are unsettling. One enduring belief is assassination, an act of betrayal orchestrated not by foreign invaders, but by the king's own court. A bitter faction of nobles, weary of his reforms, might have plotted a silent removal, covering their crime with sacred ritual to mask its shame. Supporters of this theory point to fragments of glyphs showing blades raised in secrecy, accompanied by the glyph of silence, an image scholars interpret as death in shadows. Yet, assassination alone does not account for the atmosphere of dread recorded by priests and commoners alike. Another theory emerges from ritual sacrifice. Some legends claim the king offered himself willingly to the gods, climbing the steps of the temple under the midnight stars, disappearing into chambers from which no man ever returned. His body was never recovered, but the myths say he was swallowed by stone and flame, suggesting hidden passages within the temple where he may have been entombed alive, a chilling notion that fuses devotion with despair. Still others whisper of mystical abduction. In oral stories passed down for generations, the king was said to have been chosen by celestial beings, lifted into the heavens amid a blaze of light that blinded witnesses. A carved panel, discovered deep in a collapsed shrine, depicts a figure surrounded by spirals and rays, interpreted by some as the king ascending into the sky, while skeptics dismiss it as symbolic art. Was this mythology born from desperation, or did the people truly witness something beyond comprehension? What makes this disappearance so haunting is the contradiction between sources. Archaeological evidence suggests panic and disorder, while oral traditions insist on divine intervention. Historians argue over whether the glyphs record fact or propaganda, whether the priests sought to cover a murder, or whether the people, unable to accept the loss of their ruler, cloaked it in myth. Each fragment, each inscription, each whispered tale pulls us in opposite directions, science clashing with superstition, fact dissolving into legend. And so, the throne stood vacant, draped in silence. The disappearance of the king was not just the loss of a leader, it was the unraveling of certainty itself. A ruler who had embodied divine connection, earthly power, and the heartbeat of his people was suddenly gone, leaving behind only riddles carved into stone and stories heavy with fear. Even now, scholars and seekers are left with the same chilling question that gripped the kingdom centuries ago: was the king taken by human hands, consumed by sacred ritual, or lifted into the unknown by forces beyond this world? What happened next would not only deepen the mystery, but ignite a chain of events that altered the fate of an entire civilization. For centuries, whispers have lingered in the shadowed halls of history, rumors that the king did not merely rule with a crown of gold, but with a mind sharpened by knowledge others feared to even speak of. This was no ordinary governance, it was as though he tapped into something deeper, something forbidden. Historians tell us of kings who relied on advisors, priests, and scholars to guide their decisions. Yet here, the stories part like a forked river. On one side, the realm of fact, where evidence points to libraries, star maps, and coded manuscripts. On the other, the realm of speculation, where tales describe cosmic charts hidden beneath palace stones, rituals whispered only under eclipsed moons, and symbols etched not for the living, but for those who would come centuries later. Imagine, for a moment, the power of forbidden knowledge in the hands of one ruler. Not armies, not gold, but the ability to predict the heavens, to know the shifting of tides and seasons with uncanny precision. Such knowledge could tilt the balance of kingdoms. It could make a man seem divine, his rule unshakable, his presence both revered and feared. And yet, such knowledge often comes with a price. For if one man holds secrets too great for others to comprehend, is he not marked? Marked for envy, for betrayal, for silence. Esoteric traditions whisper of hidden rituals, ceremonies that align the ruler not with men but with stars. Ancient charts, some claim, described pathways not across the earth, but through the very fabric of existence. To scholars, these are curiosities, outdated mythologies that reflect a culture's imagination. But to believers, they are breadcrumbs of truth. Could the king have accessed a system of understanding that went far beyond his time? Could he have guarded maps that hinted at distant lands, or even doorways to something far greater? The ruins themselves, fragmented and scarred by centuries, seem to taunt us with silence. Strange alignments in the architecture suggest astronomical intent. Stones set to capture the solstice sun. Chambers where echoes linger, as though designed for ritual chants. Each piece is ordinary enough in isolation, yet together they form a pattern that feels intentional, designed not merely for shelter or display, but for communion with something hidden. And here lies the heart of the mystery. Was this knowledge the reason for his downfall? Or the reason he escaped history's grasp altogether? If he truly held secrets forbidden to common men, perhaps conspiracies rose not to dethrone him, but to erase him, obliterate every trace of what he knew before it spread too far. Yet, the opposite lingers as a possibility. What if the king did not die at all, but vanished by design? Some myths claim that his disappearance was no tragedy, but an ascension. That he stepped away, guided by the very cosmic maps he guarded, moving beyond the reach of mortal record. So we are left staring at the ruins, caught between skepticism and wonder. Did forbidden knowledge make him a target of jealous rivals, or grant him the power to slip into eternity's hidden corridors? The evidence remains fractured, the truth buried beneath stone and silence. But one fact is undeniable: where history falters, mystery thrives. And as we journey deeper, the trail of the king does not end, it only grows more elusive. Beneath the blistering sun, the ruins of the once mighty king city stand silent, crumbling walls half swallowed by sand, broken statues gazing with empty eyes at the horizon. Yet within these fractured stones lies a whisper of something hidden, something waiting. Archaeologists, brushing away centuries of dust, uncovered not merely the skeleton of a dead city, but a labyrinth of secrets deliberately veiled from prying eyes. One chamber, sealed so tightly it seemed untouched since the day it was closed, revealed frescoes glowing with pigments unnaturally preserved. The images depicted scenes not of daily life, but of celestial events, stars arranged in unfamiliar patterns, a blazing orb descending from the heavens, and figures kneeling in awe. Was this an artistic imagination, or a record of something witnessed? Science points to symbolic storytelling, yet the speculation is harder to silence. Could this chamber hold the memory of a lost cosmic encounter? In another section of the ruins, carved glyphs lined a corridor, etched in spirals and fractal shapes that seemed far beyond the geometry of their time. Linguists argue they were ritual markings, guiding initiates through a sacred pathway. But others note eerie resemblances to mathematical codes found in far later civilizations, almost as if knowledge had been carried across ages. Was this evidence of a hidden network of wisdom keepers, passing their ciphered truths beneath the mask of religion? Artifacts, too, stirred questions. A bronze disc, engraved with concentric circles, lay buried beneath collapsed stones. To some, it was nothing more than a decorative calendar. To others, its precision suggested an instrument, perhaps a device to track solstices or eclipses with startling accuracy. Holding it up to the fading light, one could almost imagine it humming with forgotten purpose, like a tool that had lost its user. And then, there was the most unsettling find, a chamber containing skeletal remains positioned deliberately around a central altar. Their placement was ritualistic, their faces strangely serene. Carbon dating placed them centuries after the city's peak, suggesting pilgrims had returned here long after the metropolis crumbled. Why? Were they guardians of a secret, performing rites to preserve its memory? Or victims of a ritual sacrifice meant to lock away something dangerous? Every discovery pulled scholars and seekers deeper into the same question: were these ruins merely the remnants of a kingdom, or the fingerprints of something more enigmatic? Science leans toward human ingenuity, ritual, and symbolism. Yet the myths whisper that these chambers are more than tombs of the past, they are vaults of knowledge, fragments of a truth too vast to accept. What lingers is not certainty, but a haunting invitation. If the ruins still hide what we do not yet understand, then perhaps the answers have not been lost, only waiting for those daring enough to look deeper. And it is here, in the silence of these stones, that the greatest mystery begins to breathe. They call it the Codex of Shadows, though no scholar can agree if such a book ever truly existed. Whispers of its surface in the margins of forgotten manuscripts, in the journals of conquistadors, and in the feverish notes of treasure hunters who vanished in jungles they swore were alive with secrets. According to legend, this codex was hidden deep within a temple lost to both time and empire, a book said to preserve the fate of a vanished king, and the nature of a forbidden knowledge he guarded until his final breath. Imagine the scene: a lone explorer stumbles across weathered stone steps choked by roots, leading into a darkness where serpents were carved into the walls as if to warn intruders away. Inside, in a chamber that smells of earth and fire, he finds fragments of parchment etched in symbols unlike any known script. Were these fragments pieces of the codex, or just another elaborate hoax planted by opportunists hoping to ensnare gullible seekers? Academic voices dismiss such tales as fantasy. They point out that no physical copy has ever been verified, and that alleged references to the codex often collapse under scrutiny, revealed as forgeries or misread translations. To historians, the Codex is little more than a cultural echo, a reflection of our obsession with hidden wisdom and catastrophic secrets. Yet, even as they deny its existence, something about the persistence of the legend gnaws at the edges of credibility. For the Codex is said to contain more than royal chronicles. Its pages allegedly describe rituals that blur the line between astronomy and sorcery, mapping celestial alignments with uncanny precision. Some claim it offered instructions for harnessing the energy of eclipses, while others suggest it was a handbook for summoning forces better left unnamed. And then, the darker rumors, that the final passages carried a curse, a warning scrawled in red ink, damning those who dared to read beyond their rightful station. Treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists seize on these stories with feverish intensity. To them, the Codex is no dusty myth but a roadmap. They speak of hidden vaults beneath pyramid ruins, of coded patterns in ancient carvings, of secret societies that have guarded the book's location for centuries. Every blurred photograph of a glyph, every half-burned map, every missing artifact becomes proof that the Codex is out there, waiting for the one daring enough, or reckless enough, to claim it. But here lies the paradox. If the Codex truly exists, why has it never been unearthed despite centuries of desperate searching? And if it never existed, why do the legends persist with such stubborn vitality, resurfacing in culture after culture as though humanity itself cannot let go of the possibility that a single book might unlock forbidden truths? Perhaps the answer rests not in dusty archives, but in the human need for mystery itself. For in chasing the Codex, adventurers aren't only searching for a book, they are searching for meaning, for proof that history hides more than it reveals. And whether real or imagined, the shadow of this Codex continues to guide the footsteps of those who dare to walk where myth and history collide. And so, the trail leads us forward, into deeper jungles, darker vaults, and more dangerous whispers of what might still lie concealed beyond reach. In the silent expanse of the night sky, the Maya saw not emptiness, but a vast canvas of meaning. To them, the heavens were a living codex, a sacred script that foretold destiny. Every star, every shifting planet, every eclipse was more than a natural occurrence, it was a divine message. And when the king vanished, the sky itself seemed to have whispered secrets that demanded interpretation. Astronomers of today trace these celestial patterns with mathematics and software, yet the Maya charted them with astonishing precision centuries earlier. Their observatories, such as the famed El Caracol in Chichen Itza, were not mere towers of stone but windows into eternity. Through them, priests recorded the rhythmic dance of Venus, the eclipses of the sun, and the cycles of the moon. To modern science, these were predictable cosmic events. To the Maya, they were omens, signals from gods who controlled the fate of kings and kingdoms. Consider Venus, the morning star. Its appearance in the eastern horizon was tied to war and sacrifice. Maya rulers often aligned campaigns with its rising, believing victory was written in its glow. Now imagine, the very year the king disappeared, Venus emerged from the underworld phase, shining brighter than ever. To a fearful court, was this brilliance a blessing, or a warning? Eclipses, too, carried dread. When the sun darkened, it was thought that cosmic order had faltered. Priests interpreted such moments as demands for blood offerings, desperate attempts to restore balance. Some scholars suggest that around the period of the king's disappearance, a solar eclipse may have cast an ominous shadow across his realm. Was the king himself chosen as the sacrifice to heal the broken sky? But here lies the tension. Science insists these events were coincidences, cycles that come and go with predictable regularity. Myth insists otherwise, that the very alignment of planets and stars conspired with fate. Did the king vanish by political intrigue, or was he swept away by forces no human hand could control? There is one alignment that continues to puzzle researchers, the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter, both planets glowing red and golden side by side. To the Maya, this could symbolize a clash of divine powers, a celestial duel mirrored on Earth. Some texts suggest the king's reign ended precisely as this alignment took place. Was his disappearance then the earthly reflection of a cosmic battle above? The deeper one peers, the blurrier the line becomes. The heavens can be read as charts of science, or as scriptures of destiny. For the Maya, there was no divide. Every astronomical event carried both logic and magic, both calculation and prophecy. And so, when the king stepped into legend, perhaps it was not merely a human disappearance. Perhaps it was the cosmos itself demanding his exit, written in starlight long before his birth. From the stars above, we now turn back to the earth below, to the power struggles, betrayals, and ambitions that may have played their own role in the king's fate. For centuries, the mystery lay buried beneath shifting sands and fractured legends. But in recent decades, modern science has taken its turn to peer into the shadows of the past. Where once explorers relied on weathered maps and whispered tales, today's investigators bring LiDAR scans, satellite imagery, and ground-penetrating radar to the task. With these tools, the ruins are no longer static stones, they become data, glowing grids on computer screens that reveal outlines of structures invisible to the naked eye. Archaeologists tread carefully, brushing dust from artifacts that may have lain untouched since the king's final days. Every shard, every etching, is catalogued with clinical precision. Yet for all the caution, the air hums with the same hunger for answers that drove the treasure hunters of old. Because while scholars publish cautious reports, another breed of explorer lurks at the edges, men and women drawn not by history, but by glory, fortune, and the possibility of rewriting legends in their own names. Television crews follow with eager lenses. Documentaries frame the ruins with dramatic lighting, their narrators whispering promises of secrets waiting just beneath the soil. To the academic, these shows distort and sensationalize. To the public, they are tantalizing windows into worlds otherwise inaccessible. And so, the story fractures again, one half rooted in measured excavation, the other in spectacle. LiDAR images reveal what some interpret as the faint traces of a buried complex, corridors leading nowhere, chambers that could be tombs, or natural anomalies carved by centuries of erosion. Spectral imaging of faded wall paintings hints at figures erased or deliberately hidden. Some researchers whisper about inscriptions that appear and vanish under certain wavelengths of light, as though history itself resists being captured. Each discovery seems to raise more questions than it answers. Treasure hunters, undeterred by academic restraint, plunge into these hints with feverish determination. They dig in forbidden zones, chase rumors of secret vaults, and speak of metallic glints just beyond reach. Many emerge empty-handed, some injured, and a few never return at all. Their stories add to the legend rather than diminish it, feeding the idea that some force, whether natural, historical, or supernatural, guards the truth. In scholarly journals, the king's disappearance remains unresolved. Was it a coup erased from records, a voluntary vanishing into exile, or the collapse of a dynasty swallowed by time? The evidence is tantalizing but never conclusive. Every expedition ends with a mix of revelation and frustration, discoveries that open new corridors of speculation without ever delivering the final answer. And yet, there are anomalies that refuse to be ignored. In 2019, a joint expedition reported magnetic disturbances around the ruins, patterns that neither geologists nor engineers could explain. In 2022, high-resolution scans uncovered voids beneath the central structure, chambers unreachable without risking collapse. These findings do not solve the mystery, they deepen it. As science advances, so too does the legend. The ruins remain a stage where fact and speculation wrestle endlessly, neither yielding victory. The king's disappearance is no longer just a story of the past, it is an ongoing investigation, one that renews itself with every satellite pass and every grain of dust lifted from ancient stone. And still, the question lingers, unanswered and irresistible, is the truth finally within reach, or will the ruins guard their secret forever? For centuries, whispers of the vanished king have echoed like ghostly chants through the jungles where his city once thrived. His name, now worn smooth by time, is not just a memory but a riddle carved into stone, carried in songs, and whispered in the prayers of descendants who still wonder where he went, and why. Was his disappearance a tale of punishment by the gods, or the ultimate pursuit of forbidden knowledge? Among the modern Maya, his story is more than a legend, it is a thread woven into identity. Elders tell the tale with reverence, reminding younger generations that their roots stretch back to rulers who commanded not only armies but also the respect of the heavens. For some, the vanished king embodies resilience, the belief that their ancestors endured cataclysm, colonization, and erasure, yet their stories survive. To others, he represents warning, that even the greatest can fall when ambition reaches too far. Historians approach his disappearance with careful logic. They pore over glyphs, compare accounts, and analyze the ruins of palaces and temples. To them, the king's vanishing may have been political exile, assassination, or even voluntary retreat. Evidence of internal strife, crumbling alliances, and signs of famine point toward earthly causes, grounded in the messy reality of power. And yet, despite the ink and stone, nothing is conclusive. Every theory leaves a shadow where certainty should be. But myths have a way of filling those shadows. Storytellers across the globe have reshaped his disappearance into something larger than history. Some see him as a tragic figure swallowed by the gods, chosen to walk between worlds. Others imagine him as a seeker who uncovered forbidden truths and stepped into realms beyond our own. In popular imagination, his absence becomes presence, proof that mystery itself can endure longer than fact. The cultural impact extends far beyond the jungles of Central America. Travelers, archaeologists, and dreamers flock to the ruins, not simply to study but to feel. Standing before towering stone temples, they do not just ask what was built, but what was lost. The vanished king becomes a mirror for our own fears and desires. His story reminds us of the fragility of legacy, the hunger for immortality, and the eternal human struggle against time. Psychologically, his absence haunts us because it resists closure. We crave neat endings, victory, defeat, triumph, downfall, but here is a chapter torn from the book. The king's fate dangles like an unfinished sentence, daring us to imagine the conclusion. Was he betrayed by those closest to him? Did he vanish willingly, leaving behind the trappings of power for something greater? Or was his disappearance an act of the cosmos itself, removing a man who reached too high? Today, his story endures not because of what we know, but because of what we cannot know. Scholars, priests, and dreamers alike agree on one thing: the vanished king is more than a man. He is a symbol, of ambition, of mystery, of the fragile bridge between myth and history. So, when the sun sets over crumbling pyramids, painting the jungle in molten gold, one cannot help but wonder, did he walk into the forest and never return, his footsteps swallowed by the earth? Did he ascend to the stars, claimed by constellations that still burn above us? Or does he linger still, unseen yet present, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved but savored? The vanished king's legacy is eternal. Not in records carved neatly into stone, but in the lingering questions that outlive empires. And perhaps that is the truest form of immortality, when the silence of absence speaks louder than the certainty of fact.